Today, we're going to be having a panel discussion about surviving 2020. What are the lessons learned, and where do we go from here? So today's presentation is actually sponsored by Fakery Drinker, one of our sponsors for today's event. So we're incredibly gracious for their continued support, and we welcome Matt Levy with Fakery Drinker, who will be moderating today's discussion.
Great, thank you so much, Colin, and thanks to all of you in the audience for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules, and especially our friends and colleagues in China who we know are joining us late in the evening their time. So whether you're in the US or in China, I mean, let's face it, 2020 was hard. And frankly, 2021 hasn't been so easy either. The last 18 to 24 months have been full of change and unpredictability, neither of which is good for business. We've seen COVID-19 impact companies in a number of different ways, from shutting down production lines to causing logistics delays, increasing materials costs, and then making changes in customer preferences and market demands. So as we've heard from some of our earlier speakers, there's new legislation that's being passed both in the US and in China that's going to directly affect US-China trade and US-China relationship. Unfortunately, that legislation really reflects the unfortunate reality that the US-China relationship is strained and at a bit of a low point. So while it would be easy for us to look at all of this and be discouraged, we need to understand that businesses have accepted those challenges and have begun to adapt. And that's what we'd like to speak about today. How have companies right here in Indiana been affected by the events of the last 18 months, and how will they overcome those challenges? We've got a fantastic group of panelists with us today who are going to talk about how they and their organizations have responded. You can find their full bios in the conference materials, so I won't go into depth on those, but I'd like to introduce each of them briefly. First, we have Charlie Tsai, who's the president and CEO of Westfield Outdoors. We have Dr. Linus Lin, who's the managing director of Chorus at Eli Lilly. We have Adalet Sultan Mehmet, who's the director of social impact also at Eli Lilly. And last but not least, we have Mitchell Spencer, who's the president of Polaris Rare Earth Materials. Thanks to all of you for being here today. And before we jump into discussion, please do feel free to submit questions to the panel through the chat feature, the Q&A feature. We're going to try to leave some time at the end of the session to answer all of your questions. So with that as the backdrop, let's turn to our panelists. So the first question for the panel, I know we're all kind of tired of talking about COVID-19, but it's really one of those things that you can't escape. So how has COVID-19 impacted your company, and what have you been doing to try to mitigate those challenges? Charlie, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Colin, and thank you for the ACSI committee to organize this wonderful events. And also a lot of very great information from the previous presenters. We really appreciate it, especially Mr. Spooner, and you touched base on the bill on the tariff, and also GSP renews. This is critical for our business. I really like this session. The title says called "Surviving 2020." Right, so I'm glad that we are surviving. So it's the 2020, and I just like all the other business. The impact of the COVID is really profound. Okay, our experience has been similar to, just like riding a roller coaster. Starting from impacting from China, we cannot actually reopen the manufacturing facility over there. As soon as the factory reopen the business, and the impact of the COVID started to spread into all over the world, okay, including US and Europe. The retailer customers really get into the panic mode, and almost for 45 days, we received a request for purchase order cancellations or delay of shipping almost every day. Millions of the goods has been produced, or in the process of being production wasn't really pushed out for shipping or at the risk of cancellations, which really severe impact our cash flow and the business operations. One of the Chinese poems really can best describe the situation we had. Called 山雨欲来风满楼. What that means is the mountain storm coming, and the wind is all over the building. That's what we feel at that time. Okay. Now, fortunately, the situation changed really quickly. About almost just literally in 2 months later, the demanding started to pick up. The people really found that during the pandemic times that outdoor activities is safe and one of the best way to stay healthy and fun with the family. So really demanding got stronger every month and it got exploded. And we were unable to actually keep up all the demandings, even we keep expanding our capacities. Unfortunately, the farm did not stop here. Okay, did not stop there. So the material costs started rising unpleasantly. The RMB appreciation, the container shortage, the vessel shortage, the freight rates went through the roof. All we are dealing is all kind. We were still actually as of today, we're still dealing with all kind of challenges every day, unfortunately. So the fund did not really stop there. A couple of things we quickly learned from this pandemic time is number one, of course, protecting our legal rights through the agreement, especially vendor agreement. In typical cases, this agreement is always protecting the retail customers or customers. This is one of the very few occasions actually we can use that agreement to protect our rights, which is not allow the customer to directly cancel the purchase orders. We only allowed to push out for shipping dates. Second is really protecting the health of our employee is protecting our business. This allowed, we have been allowed employees to working from home ever since last March. And as of today, we're still working from home. And the efficiency is still good. Third is really support the community. That's what we learned, this is the importance of this. So that's what I can share on this topic.
Charlie, thanks so much. It sounds like you had the benefit of being in the right industry at the right time, as everyone was ready to go and spend some outdoor time.
Yes.
But nice to hear also that you use kind of a mix of business solutions and also using your legal rights to kind of maintain that business continuity. So Linus and Adelette, do you want to give us some thoughts about how Eli Lilly has dealt with the challenges of COVID-19?
Sure, happy to. Perhaps let me start and then let Linus also share what he has as the managing director or course or research and development arm at Lilly. So Lilly really provided a 4-part response to the pandemic. And the 4-part was first in ensuring the supply of medicines that would be continued. The second one was to protect and keep our employees safe so that we can continue to ensure indeed the medicines are getting created and supplied to the customers around the world. Thirdly, it was to support the communities in which we operate, including here in Indiana, our home state. And then fourth, as a biopharmaceutical company, just directly attacking the pandemic. So Lilly has over 40 million customers across 125 countries. It is truly a global company, so we really have the obligation to ensure that those people who depend on our medicines continue to have access to them, which would be uninterrupted. We made sure that all 14 of our manufacturing sites around the world continue to operate as intended. And for that, we took measures also to protect our supply, including some designated air cargo where necessary, and took other precautions as well to ensure that everything is uninterrupted. And then, we also took measures to ensure that those medicines continue, to flow across borders. Secondly, we took measures to protect our employees. Lilly was among the very first companies here in Indiana that, similar to Charlie's organization, also asked that employees would work from home. And for those employees who had to be on site, Lilly also ensured that protective measures were in place at the workplace. And then also, in terms of supporting the community, Lilly joined our Indiana governor, Holcomb, as well as other 7 big and influential partners here, and jointly launched the In This Together community awareness campaign, where we try to explain via social media and other media sources the importance of healthy behaviors, ensuring social distancing, wearing masks, etc. We then also came up with some solutions for the products that we have here in the US. We expanded our insulin affordability solutions to allow anyone with commercial insurance or no insurance at all to fill their monthly prescription for just $35 a month per prescription out of pocket. We also reduced strain on the medical system. As part of that, for example, early last year, we paused most of the new clinical trial sites and enrollment, which we since resumed. And then we also initially stopped all in-person customer visits as well, but also resumed them as we learned more about the pandemic. Around the world, we also donated personal protective equipment. We also encouraged volunteering here in the US, and thousands of our employees actually volunteered, including more than 1,200 at the testing sites. And then we also provided donations. We've made more than 2.2 million donations from the Lilly employees and then from the Lilly Foundation. And then we also understood that we really need to collaborate in order to provide an effective response. And Lilly joined a cross-industry collaboration of 17 life sciences companies and the Gates Foundation. And these really tease up, I think, on our response of directly attacking the pandemic. And I would like to give the floor to Linus to provide more details here.
Okay. Thank you, Adelit, and thanks, Colin and Matt, for the opportunity. Yeah, I'll expand this points about how Lilly, as a life science company, and myself as research scientist, how we felt it's time of calling, and how we jump in to be able to apply our expertise to fight a pandemic. Many of you probably still recall back in March timeframe, testing is a big problem. Not only are assays not terribly effective, but also the supply chain was damaged. Many of the reagents are not available. So Lilly scientists decided to go into the labs, develop an assay of our own that would not require all the hard to procure agents. So we can provide testing to the community. We set up a testing here on site, and many open up not only to Lilly employees, but also to frontline workers in the community. In many ways, I thought it was an incredible endeavor because Lilly never was a testing company. So when this idea was proposed, there was a lot of resistance and a lot of worry whether we actually can do that. But once again, as a scientist, we felt this is the time. This is the time we can do something to the community, and we were able to do that. I was really proud of what our leaders made, the decision they made, also how our scientists step up in that respect. And secondly, testing is obviously one part of it. The other part of it is to be able to develop medication to help our patients. Early on, as we all know, now the vaccines are very effective. But at that time, we all know vaccine would take time. How can we find medication that can help patients sooner? We jumped into with really 3 research projects, and 2 of those eventually become a viable medication. As many of you perhaps know, we have this antibody program that we essentially bring the medicine from research toward the market. It's like a 5-6 months period. It's something unprecedented. That antibody cocktail is still being used today as other medications come online. And also, we also repurposed baricitinib, another medication that also cut the death rate by nearly half. So out of the 3 programs that, in terms of discovering new medicine, 2 of them worked out and helping patients in a tremendous way, providing a bridge before full vaccination come online. So in many ways, I think as a research scientist, it's been it's really an unusual moment for it to step up. As Charlie said earlier, it's a roller coaster ride. But I think many of those, we have some good lessons to learn out of this. And we hope this is a good example going forward. How scientists and how pharmaceutical companies can be a real contribution to society.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Again, it sounds like Eli Lilly was like perfectly positioned for this crisis and definitely had a major response. So thank you so much for that. Mitchell, I'm going to come to you on the next question just to keep things rolling, if that's okay. So let's jump to our next question for the panel. So how have the recent changes that we've talked about in the US-China relationship affected your business, and how have you been responding to that? And so, Mitchell, if you don't mind, let's please start with you. Oh, I think you're on mute. And Mitchell, hang on, I think you're on mute.
Thank you for catching that. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you, Colin, as well. I would like to say just briefly, respond to the two Eli Lilly colleagues that are here, that the treatment, the special treatment that was brought on by Eli Lilly during this last year saved the life of one of my family members. So yeah, I mean, it really makes a difference, and we really appreciate really appreciate everything that Lilly did to try to help during the pandemic. So it really means a lot to those people that were personally affected in a good way by the good work that you do down there in Indianapolis. So thank you very much. So this very good question, Matthew. So Polaris Rare Earth Materials is a small firm. We have 8 people here in Indianapolis, and engineering, materials engineering, and also support people. And but we also have a joint venture factory in Ningbo, China, which is just a 2-hour train ride south of Shanghai. So we had a similar situation as what Mr. Tsai had with his company, that the you know, we felt the initial impact of the COVID spread within China, which led to our JV factory shutting down for at least 6 to 8 weeks. And then as things started to open up in China, the virus followed in through the back door in the USA and shut down all of the USA. And so we had a double hit. We had a double whammy, and very, very difficult. But I will say that, you know, we have survived. I think the first thing is to just survive. You know, we were not in control. We were riding a wave, and you just try to keep your head above water, keep yourself safe, keep your employees safe, and then finally try to way to navigate, you know, through this. And we stayed close to our employees. We also, in March, started working from home, 8 people, 8 locations. And it worked. It's not ideal, but we found out that it can work. I was sort of, you know, surprised. And the next thing that I did was, you know, Governor Holcomb set up a very nice daily update that they had daily. I think it was 3 p.m., you know, and you could go online and watch what's going on. They also published data. So I felt, you know, how do we encourage our people to make good decisions for their lives and for the business, but mostly for their lives, to keep them safe. So I thought, let's present this data that was presented. And so I think that was a good help. If you put the data in front of people and say, look, this is really what's going on. There's a lot of misinformation floating around at that time, you know, in the news media, in social media, and, you know, this was straight from the scientists, straight from the doctors. So I think that helped us to keep ourselves safe, and didn't get 100% buy-in, even with 8 people. As you know, we're all human beings, but it helped, I believe. The other thing is that because of the timing of COVID, we normally increase our shipments towards the end of the year so that our customers will have goods to last them through the shutdown of Spring Festival. So the one lucky thing, I guess, serendipity, was, you know, we had an extra 4 or 5 weeks of goods coming over on the ships to account for that shutdown in China. And we also carry 4 to 5 weeks of safety stock for our customers. So we had about 10 to 12 weeks of stock that helped our customers get through that crazy time. But it didn't last. And then, as Charlie said, the demand started to pick up in the USA, and China was open. But then the problem became the pipeline, and so we have been tremendously impacted by the pipeline. There again, there's not much we can do other than, just work with the customers as best you can, declare a force majeure, and try to share the cost or try to pass the cost through. Most of them want to share, so we have tried to share the cost with them. Tremendous costs. I think most people have heard that what used to take 4 to 6 weeks to come on a container vessel from a Chinese port to Los Angeles port or to Vancouver is now about 12 to 14 weeks. And so we have an enormous amount of inventory tied up on ocean containers, or stuck in the ports, or stuck in a rail yard somewhere between LA and Chicago. Not in Chicago, but they just stopped the trains at one point, said unload it. And so it took a long time to try to clear that bottleneck up. And the only thing you can do there is just bear it, just try to get through it. And we thought there was a glimmer of hope with this pipeline, but actually it's not. It's still a big problem. And it could be another several months before things kind of work themselves out. We've had major program launches with our customers, not our direct customers, but my customers would be the suppliers of GM and Ford and Chrysler. And so as these new programs, which we've been working on for 2 or 3 years in development, start to come to launch time, now the big 3 or 4 have delayed their launches mainly because of lack of parts. So they just push the new launches back, which is painful. But we just have to hang in there. So it's been difficult, and I would say also that the underlying disputes and disagreements between the two countries of the USA and China, as a small company, all the work that we try to do to build goodwill with customers, to try to be a good citizen in both countries, to do good work, a good trade, and to build a team in China where we have almost 100 people. It's all dependent upon an underlying support or foundation between the two countries, which I worry about is going to disappear or crumble. And so the verdict is out. I don't think anyone wants it to go away. I don't think it should go away, but it certainly has not been easy, and I certainly don't sleep well at night.
Well, sorry to hear that. There is a lot to keep you up at night these days, but hopefully starting to see a little bit of light here at the end of the tunnel on things like maybe on the logistics delays, maybe on the materials costs. I know it probably takes some time for those things to normalize again, but
yes.
So, Charlie, what are your thoughts? How do you think that the changes in the U.S.-China relationship over the last couple of years have had an impact on your business?
Well, Mr. Spencer, I really share your concern, your pain, and your, it's painful experience, for all the business under this kind of environment, especially in recent changes on the, on the two country relationship. All we do want is really doing business. We're not in politics, but I would say I never really thought that politics could be impacted our business so much, okay, until recent years. I always thought business is business, politics. I'm not a part of politics, so I should be fine, but it looks like it's not, okay? We're not immune. Especially the trade war, the tariff, almost killed our business at the initial stage. And it creates so much volatile the market environment. In the past, when we have 1 or 2 elements, for example, the material cost increase or, the RMB impact, these are the biggest factors. those are now compared with other factors, this becomes much smaller, much smaller. It creates so much uncertainty in the business. And that what is, I would say, it's in past a few years is unbelievable. It is unbelievable, unprecedented. We went through numerous of negotiation with our suppliers, our retail customers. It creates a really brutal competition in the business. Brutal. That's my my feeling, experience. But what we did was actually we leveraged all the legal tools we can available for us, including applying for the tariff exemptions. Fortunately, about 60 to 70% of our products was approved for the exemption, which really helped a lot. Unfortunately, it was expired last year, about literally 14 months ago. We also try to leverage the legal agreement, defend our not only the purchase orders, but also the pricing bottom lines, right? Because a lot of those negotiation or the changes during the season, which means we already have the pricing agreement. So we use those to defending our position into pricing. But meanwhile, we also hold, unfortunately, we hold pretty much all of our long-term investment because we don't know what's going to happen in a few years, or what is happening tomorrow. So we hold all of the long-term investment. I really, as a business man, I really wish our politicians can understand. Okay, it's not everything should be politicized. Okay, all we, the people, all we want is really a peaceful world, a strong economy, so we can feed our family, we can support our community, and we live in good life.
Well, no doubt we're living in a highly politicized environment, both geopolitically and domestically. So I hear what you're saying for sure, Charlie. And as a lawyer, I'm happy to hear that you see your legal agreements as being enforceable tools that you want to use. But also, I understand that from just a business perspective that suing your customers is not good for business. So I think it becomes kind of a carrot and stick approach for sure. So kind of just ensuring that we continue to move ahead here. Let me jump on to our next question, and we'll give Linus and Adelet an opportunity to weigh in on this one. So, with all that's going on, do you think that the U.S. market is still a viable market for Chinese companies? And vice versa, do you think that the China market is still viable for U.S. companies? What's changed over the last few years, and what should foreign investors and businesses understand in order to operate in that new environment?
Sure, give a crack at that. I think pharmaceutical industry perhaps affected a little less, in my opinion, and maybe the more interdependence of the two countries. I know certainly China, we have a pretty strong business and actually growing much faster last couple of years than in past years. So from that perspective, I think China definitely still a viable market for pharmaceuticals. And China, there's the aging population, and it's definitely need modern medicine as we go forward. On the U.S. side, certainly the Chinese pharmaceutical companies are not necessarily that competitive at this point. There's really not a lot of competition from Chinese pharmaceutical companies here in the U.S. So I can't really comment on that aspect as much. Maybe Adelet has something to add there.
Thank you, Linus. Well, I think for sure the U.S. market, as the biggest pharmaceutical market on the planet, is definitely attractive for Chinese businesses. I think I would agree with Linus that perhaps they're not yet, at the level of capabilities where they can bring forward innovation that would be competitive, right? But as far as the Chinese pharmaceutical market is concerned, I think it is definitely attractive. I think the government of China understands that when it gets to pharmaceuticals and healthcare, there is only one enemy, and it is disease, right? And that's why they're certainly interested in attracting and bringing the best innovation that is available. They are learning from other markets as they are designing how their healthcare system is going to be structured. I think it is also good that we've seen a bit of an opening to dialogue with the pharmaceutical industry, and Lilly certainly engaged as part of the industry and trade associations there on the ground. I think to Linus's point, we have seen that there is growth in local domestic innovation in China. Lilly also has a couple of partnerships there with the most promising companies who are showing, promise there. And we are bringing some of the latest innovation that Lilly has brought to China, and for us, the business is definitely growing. We are launching new products, including those that were jointly developed in the market. So that said, with all the political turmoil, I mean, certainly Lilly is, a very compliant player, certainly follows all the rules and regulations that are there, both in the US side and in China.
Great. Thanks so much, guys. It's good to know that at least we have a shared enemy in disease, and we can stop fighting with each other and focus on something that does impact all of us just as human beings. Mitchell, how about you? What are your thoughts? Oh, you're on mute again. Sorry.
So I think that I believe that what we do, which is to supply motor components for automotive use, for peripheral devices, for sensing applications that have rare earths as one of the key ingredients in what we make, still makes sense to come from China. There's a lot of talk about let's do it in the USA. That's fine. That's wonderful. But that's a long-term project. It will probably take 10 years, 5 to 10 years to try to reestablish or to establish a new economy based upon electric vehicles. It's going to take some time. So I think for now, it still makes good sense to do this import business where we manufacture the goods in China. We need to be flexible, though, somewhat, and think about how could we fit into this USA initiative. And we are waiting for signals of improvement. Is the trade going to be improved, the relationship going to be improved between the two countries, or is it going to stay like it is? As a small company, we've invested heavily in a factory in Ningbo, China, and to reinvest again in the USA or somewhere in the NAFTA zone to bring some of it here is certainly something we will consider, but we have to be very careful. We don't have millions of dollars to fail with. We have to succeed on every project as a small company. So yeah, we're thinking about it, but right now it's just a thought. Yeah.
Mitchell, I know that rare earth materials have sort of been politicized a little bit. Has there been any pushback that you've sensed from the Chinese government in terms of exporting those sorts of things out of China and importing them into the U.S.?
No, none whatsoever. I think that China understands that that they want to continue to be the main player in rare earths. I'm sure of it. And we just export the magnets. I mean, magnets and magnet assemblies that are made from a few of the rare earths. So I don't see that China's going to be a barrier to our business, except if it comes down to price wars between or informal embargoes, that could develop from the relationship of the two countries. That would concern me. Just like I would say, the penalty tariffs or the Section 301 tariffs that came about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, those were intended to send a signal. I guess the outcome was supposed to be, let's see if we can convince the other country to get themselves in line. But it seems the main effect, at least for us, was an increase in our costs. China didn't pay those duties, we did. And a lot of people thought, oh, we're going to make China pay for these, pay these duties. They didn't pay it, we did. And our customers shared it. So I'm not so sure the unintended consequences of such things need to be carefully thought out by the Commerce Department before, when their gear just goes a couple notches, a couple clicks, and then the little gears out on the end are us. It can have a big effect on us. And I hope that they will listen to the letters that we are writing and just be aware when they make their decisions, what the implications may be for some people out in the business world.
Yeah, there certainly is a trickle-down effect. And, with any luck, we'll see those 301 exclusion processes kind of reopen again. I think, as Mr. Spooner pointed out, it's been kind of a slow process getting those off the ground. But, with any luck, we see that. I think we're all aware of how much those have impacted U.S. companies. Charlie, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I share what Mitchell just said. This I can only talk about the consumer goods because I'm in the consumer goods industry, right? So I think in terms of consumer goods, I think the U.S. market is absolutely still viable, and it's as a Chinese company, I think it's really attractive for Chinese companies, businesses, and U.S. also needs the manufacturing in China. I think the manufacturing in China is still viable. Just like Mitchell said, I think it's not really the transfer or migrate of the manufacturing out of China. It's not happening overnight. It's not going to happen in a couple of years because it still is the entire supply chain. Okay, even we had some category of products was able to move out of China. For example, the cutting the soap products, we moved into Cambodia. Okay, it's a GSP country. We were waiting for the renewal of the GSP approval. Hopefully, it will go through. However, even we produce there, majority of the material is still imported from China. So basically, you're adding in one more step. You imported all the materials from China to Cambodia, and then we manufacture over there, and then we get exported into the U.S. So it's really the process did not really change much, and it will take really long time. I don't know if it's 10 years. If it's not 10 years, at least 5, 6. It's a long time to move that on that supply chains. Secondary, I think we want to make the Chinese business understand. Although the foreign investment or business, need to be understand really that in U.S. there's 2 levels of government, right? You have federal government, but you also have state government, right? Although the high level, the federal government, we have tensions, between the two governments, right? They're fighting on tariff on a lot of political topics on that. However, the state level, most of the states, especially Indiana, is still have a very friendly investment environment. Okay, they still welcome people, and the business are still welcome to invest from China, and your legal rights. Whatever, if you decide to invest here in Indiana, your legal rights is always be protected.
Great, thank you so much, Charlie. And let me just ask also, and feel free to not answer this question if you don't want to, but as a Chinese-owned company in the United States, have you felt any type of blowback or any change in how you do business or how other people here in this market react to your company?
I would say no. We did not really change any of that. It's except I would say try to stay low and stay away from politics. That is our key lessons. Again, leverage all the legal tools to protecting our rights. So I would say in terms of business process-wise, business as usual. That's what it is. It's always just a feel. We hold our long-term investment. Okay, until this crowd is a little bit clear. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen next year, or we don't know what happened after elections, right? So the policy changes, all the time. So we really have to watch until we see that it's stabilized. We see a little bit bigger visibilities, see the end of the tunnels, lights and tunnels. Then we will make decisions how we're going to move forward in the long term.
So that is a perfect segue into our next question. And Charlie, I want to start with you on this one too. So looking into your crystal ball, I mean, what do you see as being the biggest risks for your business as you look ahead to 2022? And what are you thinking about in terms of how you're going to address or overcome those risks and challenges?
Well, the biggest risk right now, looking for 2022, and we're talking the short term, right? 2022, is the biggest risk is really the consumer demanding. What I'm afraid the consumer demanding will drop because of inflation. Okay, this is just absolutely the biggest. Right now, what do we see? Not only the material cost increase dramatically in China, and the RMB is up still at very strong point. It's appreciated more than 9% over a year ago. Okay, and those all increased. I think overall, depending on the products, is the cost of the product itself increased about more than 20%. That is the cost of goods. Okay, then second part, biggest challenge is really the logistic. The freight has been increased about 500%. Okay, which is unbelievable. I never saw that in my entire life. We don't have the big buying power as the big retailers, for example, Walmart or Costco, right? They usually probably pay about $3,000 per container to US. Now they're paying $20,000 per container. So the landed cost, all the retailers calculated landed cost. Then on top of landed cost, adding their margins, gross margins for operations, on that. So that is, it could be absolutely, you will see very soon the inflations or the consumer goods. You probably already seen that pricing is going up, but you have not seen the entire picture yet. Until, I would guess, probably around the holiday season or after holiday season, you will all of a sudden realize the pricing is going to the roof. Okay. Until that, what happened will be is consumers stop spending. They will say, okay, that's too expensive. I cannot buy. So that is going to drop. It's going to be impacting business, impacting economy as a country. And hopefully, really, U.S. Trade Office can reconsider the tariff positions, or at least considering reinstate the tariff exemption, just like we discussed about it, which was expired last year. I back up on what Mitchell said. The 25% of Section 312, 302, 301 tariff, the tariff is 100% paid by either the retailer or the importers or the consumers. Okay, and end of the day, it's a consumer, because in my experience, we never had any of pricing negotiations was giving away even 1% towards going into the tariff. 100% passed around to our retailer consumer, and then I don't know how much retailer consumer passed into consumer. Okay, but either they pass or not pass, it is still impacting U.S. business, not us. I really wish that the renewal of the GSP will pass pretty soon, because right now we're paying additional tariff. So all this tariff is really the additional. In my opinion, it is a 100% additional tax for the consumers, or for our U.S. citizens, for our people. Last one I would say, keep our fingers crossed on the U.S. trade and the Congress. Hopefully they will recognize what the challenges we are facing in the business, and hopefully they will help.
Apologies for interjecting, but we do have some questions from the audience. So here's one from Ross Myers, who asks, if you had the attention of policymakers in China or the USA, what would you want to share with them or tell them?
Well,
no expletives, please.
Yeah. Matt, go ahead.
No, sorry, just a corny joke. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, I think as I touched based on that, if the lawmakers, I would say, hey, focus on something that is real, right? And focus on, just come to the ground, okay? Come to earth and solve the problems that we are facing, the business is facing every day, okay? And try to make corrections for something that has been proved in the past few years it doesn't work. For example, just tariff, when we mentioned it, think about it, rethink about the tariff. Rethink about the exemptions. renew the exemptions or expand the exemption for the products that is we are still heavily relying on the Chinese productions. Moving out of China is not a solution for a lot of products. When it comes to the buying decisions, because most of my customers are big guys, right? Big retailers, Walmart, Target, Costco, all those big retailers. When the buyers come to the table to negotiating, make a buying decision, who to buy? Is buying from products from China or buy from Vietnam or from that? There's no political elements in their consultation at all, zero. Because all they look at is the design of the products, the quality of the products, the pricing of the products, and the performance of the business. Can they deliver? Can they deliver on time? Can deliver the quality products? End of the day, the value of the products really plays the elements. There's nothing about the politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very passionate plea from Charlie. Yeah, from politicians, it seems very hard to get out of the politics. And certainly from my perspective, if you can get some ideology out of the way, try to focus on pragmatic solutions. At the end of the day, the well-being of the citizens should be number one concern, and try to look at this, the practical solutions, focus on win-win, and more communication. It's better than just stop talking with each other.
I think I would add to that maybe a couple things. One is, the first principle of medicine, right? First and foremost, do not harm. So, I would say to policymakers on both sides of the ocean, try not to implement anything that would make things worse for the business, for the economy, for society. Secondly, I think on the US side, and now I think, there is a very big debate in Congress, and our CEO has been vocal. We would definitely not like to see any policy proposals that would really undercut the current business or harm the innovation ecosystem that we have in this country. On the US side too, I would say, our industry is very IP intensive. So on both sides, to policymakers, I would say, think about what policy environment you can create that would foster that innovation environment, and ultimately that would benefit the patients.
Colin, additional questions at this point? I know we're kind of coming up on time here.
Nothing at the moment. Mitchell, do you have any other follow-ups based on that question in terms of what you would like to see from U.S. policy makers?
I agree with what everyone said, starting with Charlie and then the colleagues from Eli Lilly, that I guess, and again, I'm not in the government. I have no desire. That's not my strong point. I'm an engineer, but I guess I would just I hope that they are thinking about what do they really want to accomplish in both sides, and what do you really want to accomplish with all of what's been going on, and have your actions and your laws and your statutes meaningfully thought out so that you get the result that you want. And I don't think they want to not do business together. But you don't, it's a fine line they've got to walk, and there's a lot of collateral damage that could occur if things go south. So I just hope and trust, I say trust, hopefully trust, that they keep this in mind and not get too political, and not pay attention to the news media too much, and just do the right things.
It all makes sense to me. Could certainly use a little bit of common sense, I think, on both sides of the table.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time 18 months before sort of the world went totally sideways, what advice would you give yourself? Just sort of knowing what you know now. Adelette, why don't we start with you? You're laughing, so maybe something good to hear.
Well, I don't want to say to invest in Tesla, because I didn't have any money to invest anyway. But I would probably, I don't know how I could do anything different. If I could go back 18 months, I probably would have tried to plan ahead a little bit about some of these costs that we're incurring, kind of get customers lined up with agreements, force majeure agreements in a little more detail so that we don't have to pay more than our share. But this is one of those deals where you just have to, you're on a wave that you cannot control. You just got to get out your little surfboard, lay down on your stomach, and just hope that the wave doesn't swallow you. I think, yeah.
Great, thanks, Mitchell. Adelet, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yes, ma'am. Somehow I remember The Godfather, right? The get down on the mattresses, and I guess my advice would be, this is going to be for a long haul. I didn't know how long it would be. Didn't realize that COVID would proliferate, and we'll see the big slowdown on all things. So I guess my thing would be, get some patience.
Linus, what are your thoughts?
Sure. I guess to me, this is a reminder of that life is full of surprises. To me, to survive something like this, you just don't panic, right? Try to gather your friends and gather people around you and think through and try to fight through it and not panicking.
Yeah, not panicking is definitely key with all that's happened. So, Charlie, what about you?
Well, I would not change, pretty much everything that we have been done. I think we have been fully prepared and handle all the crisis. The only thing, if I had a chance, retroactively go back 18 months, I would do creative channels or spend more investment on the channels to bring the products from the manufacturing all the way to direct to consumer directly. Okay, this is what I would say, because even pandemic times, we all know that people are more relying on the shopping online and going into into online shopping. So this is what I would, from business standpoint, I would do that.
We promise we won't tell Target and Costco and Walmart you're trying to cut them out of the middle.
But it's benefited for the consumers, right?
That's right. That's right. So, okay. So final thoughts here as we're wrapping up in the last few minutes. Do you have one piece of advice you could offer to small and medium-sized businesses in the audience? What are some things that they should be thinking about or doing as we hopefully are starting to turn the corner on COVID, and maybe not turning the corner on the U.S.-China relationship? Do you have any advice that you would give to somebody on sort of what to be doing, over the course of the next 12 months or so? I'll open it up to whomever. Mitchell, you seem like you've got something you'd like to share.
Well, I think small businesses, stay nimble. Don't get yourself anchored down with some long-term situation any more than you have to. Watch your debt, watch your spending, and let's see how things work out. Don't get yourself in a situation where you're in trouble with investment right now. I think let's wait a little while before we make decisions that involve a lot of money, and just ride this storm. And then hopefully it'll become a little more clear in the next few months, and there'll be some confidence, in some direction, and hopefully for the better.
Great. Linus, what are your thoughts?
Sure. One thing that comes to my mind is, obviously Eli Lilly is a big company, and we talk a lot about employee well-being. It's at the moment, there's so much pressure for employees. There's so much anxiety, and also this working from home environment. It's hard to have that center of gravity to maintain the culture and connection, all that. It's really important to be able to go an extra mile to think about how employees are doing, make sure they are stay engaged, really get through this together.
Great. How about you, Adelet?
Sure, Matt. I think I would definitely echo what Linus has said. I think all employees are under so much stress, so taking the time to think about their well-being is the right step, I think, for all businesses, irrespective of size. Second thing I think I would say is don't let any good crisis go to waste. So think about any possible innovations and learnings you can take from the COVID, and then maybe see which elements you can actually institutionalize and see if this can become part of your business as usual now going forward. And thirdly, I think definitely remain hopeful, right? I think there is the light at the end of the tunnel here. We're all adapting, right? The healthcare systems have learned how to manage the disease. I think we're very close with increasing the vaccination. So I think things will get back to normal, not probably 100% normal, but I mean back to normal, and things will improve.
Great. 10 seconds left. Charlie, you got the final word. Go for it.
Great. Well, thank you. So in my advice would be for the small business, I would say survive first. Okay, only survive you can grow. Without survive, you're going nothing. Second is stay positive. Okay, stay positive, being hopeful. I always believe there's only failure, only the business can fail, but the industry will never fail. So which means the industry will always there. Okay, business could fail if you do go wrong.
I like ending on that positive note. So thank you so much, guys, for being part of this roundtable discussion. Really appreciate it.